to find out you were a Dowser just was the icing on the.
Nice. Yeah, I laughed when I saw your website. I was like, wait a minute. So, how did you come to know about me?
Um,
I'm just curious.
I rules of 10.
Uh,
Rules of 10. I have multiple copies of all of them, and I keep them in my guest room,
oh,
and so my guests would read them, and then they'd get through like the first two or the first one, and they'd say, "Can I take this one with me so I can finish it?" And
thank
then
you.
I'd end up buying another replacement copy. So I always have the 1 through 5 set. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, you drove me back to look at them because Hay House Gay and I were asked to kind of launch their fiction division because normally Hay House does nonfiction inspirational books, and so we were very lucky to have them publish those, but then the fiction division kind of ran out of steam, and so they ran out of steam. And I made sure that we did 5. That came after 4, and I said, okay, well, we have to do 5 to finish some of these storylines, and also at least give 10 and Julie their launch into a different
Yes.
reality. And of course, in my head, I have all sorts of rules after they're together and navigating that, and then of course having a child and who knows what else. But they're remaining in my head at the moment. I may get inspired to just go ahead and see if we can publish them elsewhere, but it's a little complex
Well,
when you
my
start with.
father was just here and he said, "Is there another one? Did I miss one?" And I said, "No, not yet. Not yet. I think there's a
No,
prequel.
there's the novella that is.
There's a
Yeah, there's the
novella."
5 rules, and then there's something called the broken rule of 10. Broken rule.
Yeah. So that's how I got to you. And I was such a great admirer of the work, um, Rules of 10. The audience will see an image, just that will be put in the 5 rules of 10. And I found them so inspiring and fun. Here we have this character who's, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. And he's teaching us. We're learning through him, which I just, message things can sometimes be very heavy-handed, but I felt this was just perfect for me, the messages in the book.
Thank you. I really relate to him because I am myself somebody who's been practicing some form of daily meditation or other since I was 19, and I'm quite a bit older than that now. And and yet I've also always been drawn to the struggle of being human, and found it in myself very interesting trying to navigate both sides, and retain a sense of humor and irony at the same time, which I think is essential.
Essential, yes.
So with Tenzing, I mean, Gay Hendricks is a genius, and he came up with this idea of I think Tenzing just visited him in a meditation or something anyway. And I had worked with another, and I would say, transformational author named Arjuna Arda on a couple of books of his. So Gay asked him if he knew of an editor, and that sent him to me. And I had his book on relationships, Conscious Loving, from when I was going through a divorce. It's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, whatever. And then I saw
Me
this book
too.
and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, maybe something like that would work. I had it in my bookcase. I get this message on my phone from Gay Hendricks. This is Gay Hendricks. Arjuna said, would you like to? I was like, what? And I was a little bit intimidated, to tell you the truth. But I called him and arranged to read his manuscript. And at the time, he had never written fiction. And he had this, as I told him, I'm so jealous because I love detectives, mysteries.
Yes.
That's what I read at night for my relaxation. And I said, I can't believe I've always wanted to write one. And you came up, and there was no way because there's no original detectives left. And then you come up with this idea. And not only is it completely in my wheelhouse, but it's a great idea. And his plot of the first book was excellent. But hadn't, he didn't know how to do a fictional voice yet,
Mm, yeah.
which is very hard to explain, but is essential if you're going to write fiction. But he hadn't figured out how to make this character come alive. It was essentially a kind of hard-boiled noir detective who, like, was almost like a, um, I don't know what to say, like a Spencer Tracy, or like an old, but just like, but
Yes.
found it a little too easy to be around women, and a little too easy to solve things and whatever. And then he also had these moments which were like a Buddhist lecture,
Yes.
which were fascinating, but didn't have anything to do with the other. So I just looked at it and I said, okay, he's got a great plot. That's amazing. What a great start. And I worked on it, but I just worked with an author where we struggled and struggled and struggled with how to find a voice. And so in this case, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it for a few pages and show him what I mean. I'm going to show, I'm not going to try and tell him how to do this. So I did that. And then I went up to see him, and I also, he had like a long series of titles. And I was like, no, 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 you got to do the first, the second, whatever. If it's a mystery and and he already had three in mind. And I was like, ooh, this is exciting. So, and I also recognized what I knew about being that particular form of Buddhist is that every Buddhist monastery has at least 150, maybe 250 rules that you have to follow. And they can be lofty, and they can be, don't cross your legs and look out the window if there's a woman within 8,000 feet, that kind of thing. It really is funny. So anyway, what I just said to him is, I said, like, you are a relationships expert. You and your wife have an amazing relationship. You know how to do that. He can't know any of that. We have to learn how to navigate relationships in a conscious way via his issues, because he was raised in a Buddhist monastery where you never saw a female. And he has a good heart, but he's going to be our Trojan horse for your stuff that I now deeply believe in. So we started with that. And I went up to Gay's house and I said, okay, I've done something I never done with a writer before. I just rewrote the first few pages to show you what I mean. And I read them, and he got down on his knees and he went like this. I was like, Gay, stop this. You are like my hero. But he has such a healthy ego, and he has such an extraordinary philosophy, which is that when anybody does better than I do better, if I do better than they do it. And he said, well, can you just do that for the rest of the book? And I said, oh, I can, but then it's not editing, it's writing. So I would have to be either a with or an and on the cover. So Gay Hendricks with, or Gay, and he goes, oh no, you can be an and, that's fine. We'll share it. I don't like rewriting, and you can do it better than me. You do it. This is an amazing man. I've never had that experience with any other co-creator that has so little ego and is so ready to just jump in and say, let's try this. And that's how it started. Yeah.
I have not personally been through a divorce, but I can relate to the heartache of the relationship issues. What I found interesting about Ten's character and his family background was that his mother was pretty far out. She was very wild. And here he had a father who was,
yes,
the the head of a monastery. So, and I was like, wow, how did that happen? So that gave us a little context as to why Ten was kind of having to navigate through, these relationships.
Yeah. Well, I just really feel like it's important for all of us on a spiritual journey. I mean, really for all of us, but in this context of somebody who's on a spiritual journey, to recognize that nobody has all the answers, and that whatever extreme we are raised under, you can bet you're going to be tested in the other direction. And so you were saying you enjoyed our movie Hector and the Search for Happiness.
Oh, and that is one of my all-time favorites. I
loved it. I loved writing it. It was an extraordinary experience. But one of my favorite moments was when because Peter and I, it's very, so I love collaborating, and I always end up collaborating, not always, but very often end up collaborating with men, which makes up for a very interesting balance of points of view. And but we were talking about the character of Agnes, who is this woman that Hector had been with and then wasn't with, and was sort of had this longing for. And one of my favorite things that I did as a woman co-writing with Peter was to say, we have to give Agnes a moment that everyone is hoping will happen to Hector, which is that 2x4, because he is naive and deluded in some ways. And that 2x4 has to do with something that has driven me crazy my whole life, which is this impulse we have to put somebody on a pedestal and then think that that's complimentary, and think that that's an effective way, and that you're doing somebody a favor, because you're not. And when Agnes says, you think I wait, nothing, 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 and then you just show up and you think I'm this person on a pedestal, and I'm not. I'm a real person who's had to go through childbirth and had to go through this, and that's not a relationship. That's not a healthy relationship. And I feel that way about our spiritual leaders too. If anybody is our political leaders, our whatever leaders, anybody who requires being put on a pedestal in order to feel like it's a healthy relationship, run.
Yes.
And if you are putting them on a pedestal and that's what you need, look inside.
But what's interesting about the Hector movie is that he has to go through this, without spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen it. He goes into the real dark night of the soul by himself when he's, in that
yes.
in
Yes,
that
in Africa,
situation
South
where he
Africa.
was kidnapped and believes he's going to die. So he wouldn't have been ready for the 2x4 if he hadn't gone through that.
No, he wouldn't. And he couldn't even completely express to himself why he was doing this. But that's what was leading him. I'm sure, looking at the work you do, that again, that's part of your job, is to lead them to this
get in
they're
there,
ove that. Yes,
that little root that's still in there, even if it's just this big.
Totally.
Well, lately I've been finding a lot of roots within myself.
I've not always. Hello. Oh yeah, that never stops. If you're on this path, it never stops.
Well,
thankfully, yeah.
I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I have a about you. By the way,
yes,
this is Tinker Lindsey, audience.
Hi, everyone.
She's amazing, extraordinary storyteller. By the way, she's also a Dowser, which I'm thrilled. And you also do co-writing for novels, screenplays. You edit for people, books. I'm just kind of bumping along here.
That about covers it. Yes.
But one of the things that caught my eye about your website and what you have written under your about page is that you have a Henry David Thoreau quote that says, "If you've built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them." And I thought, okay, I'm all right.
Yes.
If I can just put a foundation under all this lost that I have going on in my head or whatever I'm doing, that doesn't negate my castles.
No, it doesn't. I don't think you can. I mean, I was laughing the other day because I'm a dreamer, and I have a strong intuition, and I have to be careful with it. I need to run it by people, because I'm so sure when I hear that voice that it's the truth, and it's not always the truth. But I listen to it anyway, just to see where I'm going next. But I was laughing with a friend. I said, I think they need to put on my tombstone, how hard can it be? Because having the idea to start a school, to write a book, to make a movie, to, oh gosh, whatever your dreams are, to build a business. I haven't done that, but to start following your dream when you're 48 years old, and you're a woman and you're in a business that has ageist and sex, that kind of thing, all of that. Like that's the castle. Then you have to do the work.
Yes,
And the work is hard.
it
It's
is.
hard. But if you don't start with that sort of, how hard can it be? And I think it's so funny if you put it, on the tombstone, because life is hard and death is hard. So,
Exactly.
but we still, we go along, and I don't think we should not hope and try and believe, have faith too.
Yes. Well, I have a very good friend named Cynthia Sue Larson, um, and she always says, "How good can it get? How good can it get?" Which I think
Yeah.
is really great. But the other part of your on your bio page that I wanted to read that was so inspirational for me is that here you said you thought you'd truly mastered your life and it was all together, and then of course minefields ahead, watch out, just when you think you've got it, right, things start happening, and there's this resultant wreckage, as you say. But with you, the reason that it drove you to write, and that you write to help others, and you wrote in your bio, laugh, cry, hide, expose, drink, quit, run, collapse, dig, avoid, crash, salvage, but above all, write. And
Mm.
I can relate to all of the above. Yep,
Yes.
there's a collapse. Yep, got to dig it out. Yep, got to,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep, oops, you know.
Yep.
And what I felt that this did was it allowed me to allow myself to be human during this experience.
Yes.
It's okay to crash. It's okay, things happen. How do we deal with that? And we're learning. And also, you write because it says that writing has taught you that enlightenment is not necessarily found in the perfectly smooth, straight bits of any journey. True wisdom, not to mention true freedom and true love, is much more likely to be hiding out in the rubble. And I just said, oh, God, that's it.
Mm,
It
mm,
can be right there. There's beauty in everything, even in the rubble.
mm. Yes, that saved me. That has saved me because I was really wedded to the illusion of perfection for a long time, and it harmed me. It harmed me in the sense that what it becomes is like a suit of armor.
Yeah.
And you can only go through life that way if you are not allowing anything to touch you or hit you or do anything. And I completely understand how and why, and forgive myself and feel very tender towards that. I even, when I turned 40, I cut all my hair off, and it was like very Joan of Arc. And I just feel very tender toward that Joan of Arc person, um, and protective of of her defenses, I guess is a fun way of putting it. But no, I'm 72 now, and I have to tell you, like, it doesn't end. The rubble, I have two stepchildren who I consider my children, and two children that I carried and gave birth to, and seven grandchildren. And amongst these beautiful souls, I have, on the spectrum, I have two biracial grandchildren. I have, I mean, everybody has something, and I am in awe of them, and I'm in awe of my ability to connect to them in a way that I couldn't really connect to my kids as a parent at the time, because I was so locked into this version of how I thought things should look. And and those experiences, not just with them, but with their parents and with all the issues that have hit our world in the last few years, um, over COVID, all these different things. I mean, the minds keep exploding. They have not stopped. And the only thing that I am so grateful for now, or what I am so grateful now, is that I've done this. And I really understand, like, when something comes up and hits me in the face, and people get mad at me, my kids get mad at me, or not my grandkids, they love me, and my kids love me, but my grandkids are like, I can do no wrong. It's hilarious. Um, but with my kids and their partners and other situations, whether it has to do with what has happened to our country over exploring racism, and what's happened with people trying to navigate what happens on the spectrum, and what happens with how kids identify their gender, all that stuff. That's all come up. And a couple of times I've heard come out of my mouth when I'm the one on the firing line, um, I didn't do anything wrong. And the minute I hear that, I know you have got to look inside, because that's not possible when there's a conflict, that one person didn't do anything wrong. Whatever it looks like, that's not possible. And secondly, you don't believe in that anyway, with that. So in the last several years, I've literally had to educate myself in certain areas that I was not educated in because of the way I was raised, and had these wonderful moments when I admit fully and completely what I did do wrong. That's kind of a weird word for it, but that total accountability, then this freedom comes. And that's where I mean, like, there's so much freedom. I wish people could understand this, in deeply being accountable for something. So then you can do something about it and change the way you see things. And
it takes work.
It's so scary, and it takes courage, because it's so scary, because you think, if that's true, nothing else is going to ever be the same. And I don't want to go there. And of course, I'm in recovery. So that was my very first one of those. 24 years ago now. It's like, wait, if that's true, that can't be true. That can't be correct. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I think that's true. And then I'm like laughing and crying because, oh boy, here we go,
Yes.
And there's it continue, those revelations don't stop with some. I mean, I haven't had like a bunch of them, but I've had enough to recognize when I'm going, no, 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 no. I'd rather die than admit that. I'd rather die than give that secret up that I've held on to, all that stuff. Then I know, okay, well, freedom's on the other side. You get to choose. And you better do some writing about it, whether it's for public purposes or just for yourself, because you don't really even know how you feel about this. You're too scared to even admit it to yourself. So I hope this makes sense. We're a little bit abstract here, but yeah, it's been an amazing. That doesn't stop, and the world is challenging us more and more.
Well, in the industry that you're in with screenwriting, that can be very challenging as well. So that's a minefield.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you learned how to navigate that early on, I'm guessing.
Well, I was lucky that I had written a personal essay that it talked about me training for a marathon, which is hilarious because I don't run. I list forward, but that was one of the ways I decided to deal with my marriage falling apart. And I'd been involved in the industry because my first husband was an actor, and a fairly successful one. And my job was to contain his craziness, as he was a successful actor, and he was brilliantly talented and extremely broken in a lot of ways. And I was madly in love with him. And I just thought, well, my job is to keep all of this going. I'm going to keep it going because that's what I do. And it worked for a while until it didn't. Because again, when you're in a relationship, it's not just when you put someone on a pedestal, but when your job is to kind of contain them, eventually they're going to resent it.
Yes.
And so that's what happened. And look elsewhere for that pedestal that doesn't include someone who puts them with, that doesn't include the containment, so.
Yes, understood.
Yeah. So but I can't remember. Oh, what was writing. Oh yeah. But I always harbored this desire to write and to be a creative person myself rather than to be the person allowing the other person to be creative. And I read all the scripts that came through to him first and would say, this is great. This is great. So I was already dowsing in
Right.
that.
Oh, you were dowsing then. Oh,
I was
yay.
dowsing, metaphorically dowsing. I mean, I'm not a dowser. I am a creative dowser. I don't know. I don't know what the term entails, except I
Creative
know.
dowsing is fantastic. What did
Yeah.
you use? A pen?
No, I just used my intuition. That's what I'm saying. I
Ah,
didn't actually douse. Like for me, when I was trying to put a term, um, and I think in metaphors because I'm a writer, to how I work creatively, I imagined, because I love the image of somebody who has the branch or whatever it is, the piece
the sticks or
that
I
will pull them towards what it is that's wanting to be known. I have a beautiful woman screenwriter, author of a screenwriting book, which if you ever get to interview her, you absolutely should. Her name is Dara Marks, and she wrote a book called Inside Story, The Transformational Arc of Storytelling. Let me see it. Inside Story, The Power of the Transformational Arc in Storytelling. And one of the things she says in her book is, people say, write what you know. I believe the powerful writing is writing what wants to be known.
Oh,
And that to me is creative dowsing. And that is where, whether I'm working myself on something or whether I'm helping another author with their book to help them make it more powerful, I'm using my insides. I am the instrument. I'm not the dowser. Something else is the dowser. I'm the instrument that's reading something and I'm going like, whoa,
yeah, you lead.
what is that? That is wanting to be known. And you need to go there. Lean into that. And here's how you can do it with how this is structured or something like that. Then that's the castle. And then, okay, now let me help you put the structure under it. Start here, pull that over there, change the blueprint, So that's the way in which I'm a dowser. I don't want to take away from your expertise.
No, that's called deviceless dowsing.
Great. That's what I am. I'm a deviceless dowser.
Intuitional, like you don't use.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
But you use your body. Your body.
Yes.
You could even say body dowser if you lean.
Yeah, it like comes through my
your
yeah, it's very abstract, but it's very concrete.
Yes. But I want to get to your screenwriting credits, and I also want to talk about your latest book coming out, Altered, which is just, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
I know. I did bring it. It's hot off the press here. Hot off the press. It just came out. I just got the cartons. We're having our book launch on Sunday, so thank God they came.
Well, that's such a metaphor. Honestly, we could go in so many different directions with that, with the, how we move through our consciousness, what clothes we wear, what colors we choose.
Oh my gosh, it was the most amazing. I have been very, very, very lucky to be in a writers group for decades now. And, we have met once a month, bringing our different pieces and critiquing them. Members have changed, some have moved, some, sadly, one of the contributors to this died last month. She was our founding and oldest member when I came in, and but this was a crazy thing because we all write different things. None of us is in the same genre, I would say. But and I probably had done the most personal essay writing, I would say, although one woman had written a memoir also. But what we did was we didn't have anything coming up, and one of our members was the professor of fashion design at a well-regarded, first with Otis and then Woodbury, I think, out here. And she, so she treated us to a Zoom, to a like PowerPoint of something, because she taught both in Cuba and in China. And she taught us, she gave us like, these are the things that I've done with them. And the Cuba one was fascinating because during the Cuban oppression that took place, when Castro came in, everything became very monochrome. But underneath, the women began designing clothes with just brilliant colors and all the crazy weavings, and brought up into, their old, from their grandmothers and all of that. And we started talking about fashion as a kind of mirror of what's going on, either personally or in your life. And I was like, I don't know fashion. I don't know from fashion. But it turned into the meaning of pieces of clothing. And we decided as a prompt to each just write something. And I knew what I wanted to write about, which was this dress, which was when my mother died, my sister and I were going through her things. My father was like, please deal with that. And I found this dress in this bottom of this drawer. I don't want to give it away because the essay is all about this, but I just found this extraordinary dress with a note on it that it had belonged to my grandmother and that it was hand sewn for her in Cuba. And I loved my grandmother. My mother was a tough cookie. I loved her too, but she was very tough. She'd had a rough, my grandmother and my mother did not have the kind of relationship that my grandmother had with us. And my mom was affected by that, of course. Mm. So we were laughing. We all said when we all wrote these stories we found in our closets, 9 times out of 10, what we found in there were our mothers. Yeah. But in this case, it's very much about about a secret that I found out about my grandmother and this beautiful, beautiful dress. And it just turned into this incredible self-reflection on all of this. And the dress fit me, and I could put it on, and it was just like, was extraordinary. And each of us, and then we wrote another one, and then we wrote another one, and we realized, oh, this is a thing. And not only is this something we can do and we can publish it as a group, maybe there are other writers groups or women's groups or whatever groups or men's groups where people can do the same thing, because it seems to be this universal thing. When I bring it up to someone, like I had this dress, I had a leather cowboy jacket that I lost, that I loved, that sort of connected with the other pieces of clothing that I lost, that I loved. And my understanding that we lose the things we love because we wear them. And when we wear them all the time, that's often when we lose them, because we have loved them so much that they're gone because they're out there. The things I don't care about are very safe in my closet. And that fascinated me.
Wow.
Lost and found, and then coming to the point that maybe someone who found it the way I found it in a shop, in a what do you call it, a secondhand store, maybe somebody found that and got the same joy that I had. So it was just, that's the kind of thing these essays do. And we are so excited. And we called it Altered Stories We Found in Our Closets, because these experiences changed us. Oh. I'll bet you have one. I'll bet you have a few.
I have to say, I got into this habit years ago where I would just, everything in my closet would go and I would start all over.
Interesting.
I know. And then a few years later, I'd think back, I wonder where that thing is that I really love so much. And I had already given it away.
Interesting.
It was almost as if there was this monastic part of me that said, you can't have possessions. You have to give everything away. And then I would start over again.
There's your essay, because of that notion of what is non-attachment. What does attachment and non-attachment mean? And sometimes our commitment to being unattached is fundamental. It's like a fundamentalist point of view. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Just throw it out. and start all
My sister has that much more than I do. And it's fascinating because it's not that I hold on to a lot, but there are things I hold on to because, but you, again, you read, what is that wonderful woman who says, you know, you touch each piece and you see if,
over
you know, what does it bring up for you?
endo and
Yeah. And yeah, I always laugh at that because like the thing I'm attached to are all my words and my stories. My poor little mausoleum downstairs of all the projects that never got off the ground, going back to the difficulty of screenwriting. And I just look, I was like, well, maybe one day. And some of them are like, no, they already did a movie and you didn't get to write it. Let it go. But I'm like, but I fell in love with them. And, you know, I knew somebody has to take
I'm
care.
so looking forward to getting my copy of Altered.
Yes, altered stories we found in our closets. You can, it's on Book Baby. The order the book, the hard copy is on Book Baby. Otherwise, you can get the ebook. It's currently on Amazon and it's going to be on others in about 30 days, but it's already now available on Book Baby. And I can't wait to hear. You have to email me and tell me what you think.
And it's a collaborative group.
Yes, we each have 3 or 4 essays in it. I have a couple of poems. Our resident poet, who's brilliant, has many more. The foreword, which in and of itself includes like a little tiny mini altered essay, is written by Katie Hendricks, Gay's wife, who is really a beautiful writer. And I had read a suite of her poems that I don't believe were published, but were on her website or on her somewhere. I found them somewhere. And about rooms, different rooms that had meaning. And it really reminded me of what we were doing with clothing. And I knew she loves very expressive, beautiful clothing and has a whole philosophy around it. So I asked if she would write our foreword. And so that's worth the book right there. I mean, and she has a poem in there that's wonderful. So
Oh,
it's great. And we edited, the 5 of us that are still meeting every month, we meet at my friend Monique's house on Foothill Drive. So we call ourselves the Foothill 5. And I like it. It's kind of like, you know, gunslingers. And so we wrote these essays and then we would work on them. And then we reached out to like 4 previous members, and they each contributed an essay, which we also edited. So there's 5 of us who are the editor authors, and then 4 contributing authors, plus Katie. And it's I'm really proud of it. I hope it inspires other people to do the same thing because we are of a very particular age range, culture, white, you know, older women, semi to very privileged, whatever. And it would be so fascinating for me to see if there are groups from other cultures that would want to, or different generations, to see what they come up with, because you just find out so much we found out so much about each other that we didn't know based on these. It was extraordinary.
oh, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
want to move into your latest screenplay. Well,
Christmas movie.
Christmas movie. Yes. A Sudden Case of Christmas that's coming out. Is it out?
It's out. It is currently available in pay-per-view on Apple TV and I think Amazon and one other. Shout Media are the ones who are distributing it. And then Hulu, it's going to be streamable as of December 9th, I think, on Hulu, if you're a member of Hulu. I don't think it's coming into the theaters. Poor movie industry. They don't know what they're doing now.
This project just landed in your lap, or someone came to you?
It was wild. It was a wild story. It's a very good story, I think, of just saying yes, I think. My writing partner, Peter Chelsom, and I, who do a lot of different things, we did a movie a couple of years ago. We are in a kind of strange niche of storytelling where it's not blockbusters. And it's just, and if it's not a blockbuster, but Peter is is a blockbuster director from before. But it's the industry is very confused about what it wants to release now. Obviously streaming has changed everything and COVID changed everything. And so nobody knows quite what they're doing. But we always I always wanted to write a Christmas movie just because I don't particularly love them because I think they're too cookie cutter, Christmas cookie cutter. But I'm fascinated by niche movies. Like I actually like the niche of horror. And I want to, there's one I'm working on now, and they always have this side to them that is, um, there's hidden messages, it's
Yes.
redemptive. But I happen to like that too. And so anyway, you can't, I don't know what people say, what genre to write. I said, I like to write good stories that change you at the end in some way. Um, Peter and I had worked on this movie in Italy called Security, which is an Italian movie. It's in Italian, but we wrote it in English. He lives in Italy now, and he's fluent in Italian. I'm not, but it was a thriller. I love thrillers. So we wrote a thriller that did very, very well when it came out and kind of brought us more into this arena of working on films in Italy. And there was a company that had made a Christmas movie that was very successful in Italy, and they wanted to remake it as a international English cast English movie. So we watched the movie. I have to be careful here, but I will say that it was disappointing as a movie, the Italian version, to the point that we were like, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. We can't make this work. So, and plus they didn't want to pay much and it was a weird schedule. And so we said no. And then they came back and they said, well, what if we, pay you a little more? And what if we said, no, thank you. We talked about it and Peter, I said, well, maybe. And he said, I just can't. And I'm like, okay, I understand. And so then they came back a third time and said, what if you don't hold to the premise completely? You write what you want. And so I called Peter and we were talking and I said, Peter, is this the helicopter? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, that joke where the water is rising and he's asking God for help. And first you get the rowboat and then it's up to here. And then they get the motorboat and then it's up to here. And then the helicopter comes, and then he drowns. And I said, we want it. We're going to be paid, not well, but paid, well enough to write something. We get to be together again. It's Italy. Maybe we should say yes because things happen. Oh, and also I'd been going through this trauma over Christmas because of some of the stuff I spoke about before with my grandchildren and families and interrelations. And there was this, and it all came about because of a traumatic Christmas that happened in that moment. And I love Christmas. It's something that's handed down that I've completely kept from my parents. So anyway, I was just like, Christmas, it's a disaster. And Peter was going through some some difficulties in his relationships, and he was like, relationships. So anyway, we got together and we decided to write this. And with the premise is very interesting, which is that I'm not giving anything away by saying a little girl and her parents go to Italy to her grandfather, who she adores, has a place. And they go in the middle of summer and they always go at Christmas. They never go in the summer. And so the grandfather, who's played by Danny DeVito in the movie, is like, why are they coming? Why are they coming? Oh, maybe they're coming because she's pregnant again. The little girl is about 10. And it turns out that's not at all why they're coming. They're coming because they're getting separated and they want the grandfather to tell the little girl. So that's the premise. That's the jumping off point, which was always the jumping off point. And we took that and we ran with it through the little girl's point of view and the grandfather's. It becomes a grandparent story, but it's not your normal Christmas story. It's got reality in it. Sorry, but and it's not, as far as I can tell, the two kind of forms of Christmas movies that come out, one are either and they're lovely and they're like having cotton candy or, warm muffins and cocoa story of Hallmark, and it's almost kind of like one plot, where the woman goes back to her hometown and then meets the old, and then they all have Christmas in their fun. Or they're like very raunchy, X-rated, bad Santa,
Yeah.
which are very, home for the holidays, pretty funny, and and there's one like you don't really know that it's a Christmas movie, but it's kind of around Christmas, which is Love Actually, which is beautiful, interweaving stories. But what we've done, which we love to do, Hector was the same way, is we mix up the genres. Like you can't explain it. It's not just happily ever after. It's not a dark, diatribe. There is a message that has to do with the importance of love, no matter what. And so people either love it or hate it, which is exactly what happened with Hector. People either loved it or hated it. Unfortunately, the first reviews that came out were from British reviewers who hated it after we'd gone to a Toronto Film Festival where people were standing ovation and sobbing. And I still get letters from people about how this movie has affected them. But we had initially after it came out, there's something called Rotten Tomatoes that gives you a
Yes,
percentage of
yes,
red tomatoes, which is good, or Rotten Tomatoes. We had
yes.
0%, 0%. I'd never even seen that before. But so right that night, I was just like, this is what's going to come up whenever anyone Googles me, 0% on right. And then I was like, the next morning I was meditating and I was thinking, and I was like, okay, Tinker, why do you tell stories? Why do you tell stories? Why are you doing any of this? Is it to have people love you? No. Is it to have people think everything you do is perfect? No. Is it to touch people? Yes. Does that mean sometimes you touch people's nerves? Yes. Would you rather have you've seen the people who love this movie, now you've seen the critics who hate it. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer, yeah, it was pretty good? And I was like, no, I'm writing to touch nerves. So I got back up and kept going.
Oh my gosh, that's the best way to deal with that criticism that's beautiful.
Thank
Well,
you.
I look forward to seeing it. I will look into that. I wanted just to briefly mention some of your other beautiful films. So shall we dance?
Yes, I was very involved in that. That was tricky because it was a beautiful original film but it was a Japanese film that was very embedded in the Japanese culture. We have such a different culture. And so we had to really investigate why, excuse me, why the Richard Gere character was unhappy, similar to Hector, and whether it's okay to long for something when you appear to have everything.
Mm.
And so that was where we started with that. And I'm very, very proud of it. And Peter, of course, directed it so beautifully. He's really,
Yes,
I'm not particularly visual. I'm more like when we
it's
work on things,
interesting as a writer that you're not visual.
I'm not that visual. I mean, I can describe things, but what I guess I'm saying is translating it into actual visual images, it doesn't come to me that way. Like what comes to me is whether it works emotionally.
Right.
And so we're a good team because he'll say, oh, I see this as the ending. And I'll go, oh, that really works emotionally. Let's build toward that. And he'll see it as as visual. And I work with visual directors. I also work with an Indian director named Pan Nalin, who came out with an amazing movie called Last Film Show. That was the Indian entry into the Oscars, International Oscar Award. He and I are working on something that we hope is going to be shooting in January that's set in Sardinia. All roads lead to Italy. That's a beautiful film about. It started out as coming of age, but I think we've cast someone that's a little older. So now I say, okay, it's gone from coming of age to melting of the armor story. But it's a great story. Anyway, he's very, very, very visual. And my job is to translate his visuals into something that works emotionally and then nudge him towards doing the emotional so that the visual works. So it's great.
Well,
Yeah.
you've done some beautiful other films as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I have hidden credits in some of them because the Writers Guild, bless them, but they're very strict about percentages of how much you've written. I think there's a new credit now that says you've written on it. And so I'm getting smarter. Now I ask for a executive producer credit if I go in on writing and I know there's going to be an issue. When you work with a director, they are even tougher because it's very easy for directors to say, "Oh yeah, I wrote it," and they didn't do the writing. Peter does do the writing, but it's important to protect writers, and but sometimes you get left out. It's too bad.
Well,
Yeah,
you get a little credit somewhere here and
I
there.
do in my heart, and I get paid, and I can write on my website that I was involved.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you. We want to go back and say if you haven't read Rules of 10, please pick it up. There's 5 stories and a book. Is that a prequel?
The prequel, that's a ebook. Yeah, important to read before the fifth rule, I think, because it takes place in the monastery when Tenzing is a young boy there, and
So
you
10
read.
is short for Tenzing. So this is
Yes, yes. And each book has a rule, which is he's used to rules from living in a Buddhist monastery, but each book has kind of an organic rule that arises for him as something he needs to pay attention to, and the plots are are infused with that rule. And one of the most fun things was writing it and then discovering what the rule was because we didn't always know.
oh,
And
interesting.
then we would go back and craft it to be a little more
Because he's a
more
police, he's a cop, he's a
yeah,
detective.
yeah, he's an ex-cop who goes into being a private investigator, which I love. We should all be private
Great.
investigators for ourselves, right?
Yes, I love that. And then, of course, Hector and the Search for Happiness. If you haven't seen that film, please, please do
I'm
yourself.
very proud of that film. That expresses me more than anything. Yeah, I'm so
And
proud of it.
and then, of course, A Sudden Case of Christmas, which is out now and will be available to
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
online.
And what I wanted to say about that is we had such low expectations of it in a way because it just the way it came about. And we are thrilled to see that it's getting a lot of attention. And the actors came on because they said, "We want this. This is real. We want this Christmas story. It's beautiful. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. And it's also more realistic, I guess is the right word, of what it's like to be a families in this time." But also the reviewers, we don't have a ton of them so far, but there's one that hated it. And then there's these reviewers that really get what we were trying to do. And one especially said, "This movie makes me feel less alone." And
Oh,
that's what I write for.
yes. And then, of course, Altered.
Altered stories we found in our closets.
That's a beaut.
Yeah.
That's
We're going to try and get a website set up eventually. We haven't done it yet because we've been so busy trying to get this book off the ground, but where people could offer their own stories just to look at them because we're so fascinated by this, thing that we never think about. And it's such a part of our lives, which is what we put on our bodies.
yes.
I really thought about what I wanted to wear today. Have it be warm and, you know,
See.
bright but warm.
Yes. Yeah. And also, you mentioned that you were a meditation teacher. I just want to touch on that for a moment.
I was initially, I learned transcendental meditation when I was in college and went to Europe, Iowa and Europe to become a teacher. And I taught for 2 years in England. And then I moved back to back to New York, but moved to California with 4 other people who had been involved in these advanced courses. And we started out trying to do a children's television story for the inner life, but Sesame Street ended up doing that anyway, and it never quite worked. But no, and then when I went through my divorce and I started therapy, the therapist that I worked with was a mindfulness Vipassana meditation person. And I altered my practice because what I found was that while it saved my sanity, I think, and saved me in many ways, the TM practice, it is one in which you use a mantra. And I found that it kind of supported my desire and sort of talent at dissociating, which was like going off into this beautiful world and then coming back and never the twain shall meet kind of thing. And
Yes.
so what I went more into was a body-centric practice, which is breath and staying in my body. And I went to Spirit Rock, this area in Northern California, where they do these long retreats just to bring myself more into that. And so I'm not a teacher of that, but I am now a practitioner of that. Although every once in a while I'll bring in my mantra if I'm particularly agitated and just use that as my slide in. I can't say enough about what a great thing that was for me. But again, it shifted. So now I'm not teaching anymore. I'm practicing.
Oh, great. I went to the Vipassana Center in the foot of the Sierras in Norfolk, North
Yes,
Vipassana.
yes.
Yeah, several sessions there, mind altering, body altering.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. Well, my when I was with my therapist and he said, "Let's meditate. Let's see what's going on." And we meditated, and I had my normal experience. And he said, "What was that for you?" And I said, "Oh, it's great. I went to this place and blah blah." And he goes, "Yes." He said, "You're very obviously very skilled at having out of body experiences. Now I want you to come into your body. We're going to work on that." I was like, "Whoa, okay." But it was very good advice for me. It was important that I break down those walls between the two.
Wonderful. Well, is there anything you'd like to add? I mean, I feel like you're just so full of wisdom. Your books are full of wisdom. Your storytelling is witty and humorous and gives us hope and inspires us. And I'm truly grateful for your work. There's
And
something.
I just thank you. And again, no pedestals here because basically I always say I'm the poster girl for slow learners and then poster girl for Leo, the late bloomer for late bloomers. So I would say don't give up on what what you feel you really want. Gay wrote a book called The Big Leap, and it's a beautiful book, and he talks about zones, and he says we all have zones of competence, zones of excellence, and zones of genius, and try and get out of we can get stuck in our zone of competence, and then or our zone of excellence even. And I was stuck in a zone of I don't know if it was competence or excellence, but it was management, managing other things, and the important thing was to leap into daring the other zone, which is genius, which is what is the thing that really feeds you. Also, I'd say keep it simple. Having said all that, this we've talked about a lot of things, but I had a very lofty mission statement for years creatively, and it was just, and it had all the things you talked about, telling stories that take you from here to here to, and I thought about it the other day, and not the other day, about a year ago, and I was like, wow, that was really useful when I was trying to decide what kind of stories to tell and where to put my energy and everything. But now I just want to do interesting work with people I like. The other stuff kind of comes out of that. And it's been so nice. It's been very freeing to just sort of liberate me into being a little less precious about what I'm supposed to be doing with my life and a little more like, lean into the things that make you want to get out of bed in the morning with people you like and avoid the things that will make you want to hide with people that you don't trust. It's
Mm,
very simple.
that's
Very simple.
very good advice for this times. I mean, not some,
For these times especially, but just in general, it's, because I really am not in control of anything but myself. So I'm not
yes.
going to change
Yeah.
things that way, change people in that way. So
Yeah, no. Well, your books offered, your books and your movies offer that opportunity for us. Thank you.
yeah, and have fun too. I'm a baseball fan. I see all my bobbleheads, my Dodger
Oh,
bobbleheads. I'm a
yeah.
big Dodger fan. And guess what? this year was a good year to be a Dodgers fan. I had so much fun with it. My little wounded Warriors out there, everyone left, and then they won the World Series anyway. It was so
Oh,
great. It was so fun.
we have to have those things that we get
We
to
do that we love.
celebrate.
Anyway, you are lovely. I really appreciate this, and the timing couldn't have been better. So your Dowser is
My Dowser's working.
Ellen strong, and I think it's really on point. I was laughing when I was like, any other time I would have gone, I'm not sure. And this was like, yes.
Thank you, Tinker Lindsey, for being with us on Wisdom Keepers of Earth. It was really a great pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.